opened the door to a world of recipes that once defined American kitchens. These dishes shaped family traditions, carried households through hard times, and turned simple ingredients into unforgettable memories. What you are about to see is more than food. It is a journey through the flavors that guided our grandparents and built the legacy of home cooking. Stay with me, because every recipe in this list reveals a piece of history that deserves to be remembered. Betty Crocker's scalloped potatoes. There was a time when a single casserole dish could bring an entire family to the table without anyone calling out a reminder. Betty Crocker's scalloped potatoes carried that kind of power, and they became a quiet symbol of warmth in mid-century American homes. This recipe did not rely on shortcuts or modern conveniences. It relied on patience, precision, and the belief that simple ingredients could create extraordinary comfort. The story begins in the early 1950s, when families depended on home cooking to stretch their budgets while still keeping dinner special. Betty Crocker's version instructed homemakers to slice potatoes as thin as paper, a task that required sharp knives and steady hands because mandolins and electric slicers were rare. Each slice mattered, because every layer had to cook evenly for the dish to achieve its signature tenderness. The sauce was the heart of the recipe. It started with real butter melted slowly with flour until it reached a soft golden color, forming a smooth base that welcomed warm milk. Generations of home cooks stirred this mixture with quiet focus, creating a velvety blanket that coated each potato layer. A pinch of pepper and a hint of onion completed the flavor, subtle enough to feel familiar but rich enough to stand out during Sunday dinners. The casserole baked at 350 degrees for precisely 90 minutes. Covered first, then uncovered, it gradually transformed into a bubbling, golden centerpiece that filled the house with a promise of togetherness. Families served it with pride, knowing it cost little but delivered everything that mattered. Today, recreating this dish is more than a recipe. It is a chance to step back into a kitchen where time moved slower and every meal felt like an act of love. Betty Crocker's banana bread. Before food waste became a concern or modern baking trends arrived, overripe bananas found their final purpose in kitchens across America. Betty Crocker's banana bread transformed what might have been discarded into something tender, flavorful, and comforting. This recipe was not just about sustenance, it was about resourcefulness, creativity, and family tradition. The story begins in 1950, when Betty Crocker first introduced her version of banana bread. Grandmothers followed instructions meticulously, mashing bananas with silver forks to avoid discoloration, long before stainless steel became common. The bread relied on sour cream rather than yogurt, creating a moist, dense crumb that remained fresh for several days. The inclusion of chopped walnuts was essential, adding texture and subtle richness that elevated this simple loaf into a treat worthy of Sunday breakfast or afternoon tea. Mixing the ingredients required attention and care. Butter and sugar were creamed together until light and fluffy, eggs were incorporated slowly, and finally, the banana sour cream mixture was folded in gently to preserve its delicate structure. Baking demanded patience, as the loaf needed to rise evenly and form a golden crust without overcooking. The result was a loaf that smelled like warmth and home the moment it emerged from the oven. Beyond its culinary excellence, banana bread held an emotional significance. It symbolized ingenuity during times when families had to stretch every ingredient and provided a small luxury at minimal cost. At 19 cents per bunch of bananas in 1955, using fruit that might otherwise be wasted turned into both nourishment and delight. Recreating Betty Crocker's banana bread today is an invitation to step into the kitchens of the past, to feel the care and pride poured into every loaf. It is more than a recipe. It is a memory, a tradition, and a gentle reminder of a time. Hot water cornbread. Long before convenience foods filled supermarket shelves, hot water cornbread held a cherished place in Southern kitchens. This humble dish was more than cornmeal and water, it was a testament to ingenuity, thrift, and the comforting rhythms of home cooking. Families relied on it during hard times, yet it always brought a sense of pride and warmth to the table. The recipe appeared in Betty Crocker's regional collection in 1948, capturing a method passed down through generations. Unlike regular cornbread, this version required boiling water to be poured directly over stone-ground white cornmeal. The mixture was stirred carefully until it formed a thick, pliable dough. Each step mattered, as the texture determined whether the final bread would be crisp on the outside and tender inside. Cooking was equally intentional. Small cakes of dough were formed by hand and fried in cast iron skillets, often using bacon grease instead of oil, a technique that infused the bread with savory depth. Steam escaping from the center signaled readiness, and removing the bread too early or too late could alter its delicate balance. This attention to detail made every bite a reward for patience. Hot water cornbread was more than sustenance. At 10 cents per pound for cornmeal in the late 1940s, it provided an affordable, reliable accompaniment for beans, greens, or eggs. It exemplified a time when every ingredient was respected, and nothing was wasted. Families would gather around the skillet, passing the bread while it was still warm, sharing both food and conversation. Today, recreating this dish is a window into history. It allows modern cooks to experience the textures, flavors, and traditions that shaped Southern kitchens and sustained households. Hot water cornbread is not merely a recipe. It is a connection to past generations, a symbol of resourcefulness, and a reminder that simplicity can create something extraordinary. Betty Crocker's apple pie. Apple pie was never just a dessert, it was a symbol of home, tradition, and care in mid-century America. Betty Crocker's 1953 recipe captured this sentiment perfectly, transforming a simple selection of fruit and dough into a centerpiece worthy of Sunday dinners and family celebrations. Each pie told a story, combining flavors, textures, and patience that modern shortcuts could never replicate. Grandmothers followed Betty Crocker's instructions with precision. The recipe called for 3 types of apples: Granny Smith for tartness, Macintosh for sauce, and Golden Delicious for firm chunks. Each variety contributed distinct qualities, ensuring a balance of flavor and consistency that carry through every slice. A tablespoon of fresh lemon juice and a half teaspoon of nutmeg were the subtle secrets that elevated the dish, creating depth that lingered on the palate. The crust was equally important. Lard, not shortening, was folded carefully into flour, creating layers that flaked beautifully with every bite. Rolling the dough required a steady hand and patience, as imperfections could compromise the pie's structure. Once filled and covered, the pie baked until golden, filling the home with the unmistakable aroma of warmth, sweetness, and comfort. Apple pie was affordable yet special. Apples cost only 8 cents per pound in 1954, making the dessert accessible even to families on tight budgets. Still, the care devoted to preparation transformed simple ingredients into a meal that felt celebratory, a reminder that thoughtfulness in the kitchen created memories that endured. Recreating Betty Crocker's apple pie today is more than a culinary task. It is a journey into kitchens of the past, where attention, love, and tradition shaped every dish. Each bite connects modern cooks to generations before them, preserving the flavors, techniques, and emotions that made apple pie an enduring symbol of American home cooking. Peach cobbler. Peach cobbler was summer on a plate, a dessert that captured sunlight, warmth, and the rhythm of family kitchens in mid-century America. Betty Crocker's 1949 recipe preserved this tradition, guiding homemakers to transform fresh fruit into a bubbling, golden creation that united households around the dinner table. This was not merely a sweet, it was a celebration of resourcefulness, patience, and the simple joys of home cooking. Grandmothers began by selecting ripe peaches, blanching them carefully to remove skins, a step modern cooks often skip. This labor ensured a smooth, tender filling that retained natural sweetness while allowing the fruit to melt perfectly with the topping. The batter was unique, not quite cake and not quite biscuit, delicately sweetened with vanilla and a touch of almond extract, producing a texture that balanced the juiciness of the fruit below. Baking required attention and intuition. The cobbler had to bubble vigorously, signaling that the juices were thickening adequately and that the topping had formed a golden crust. Families monitored this transformation with care, knowing that even minor deviations could alter the dish's character. Serving it warm, often straight from the skillet, created a sensory experience that engaged sight, smell, and taste in equal measure. Affordability was another hallmark. During peach season, fruit cost as little as 12 cents per pound, allowing families to prepare multiple cobblers to share, freeze, or enjoy later. Yet despite its low cost, the dish delivered richness and comfort that elevated ordinary days into moments of celebration. Recreating Betty Crocker's peach cobbler today is more than a culinary exercise. It is a journey into the kitchens of previous generations, a way to experience the flavors, techniques, and patience that defined American home cooking. Each spoonful evokes nostalgia, reminding us that simplicity, care, and tradition can create extraordinary memories. Betty Crocker's rice pudding. Rice pudding was more than a dessert, it was a quiet ritual in American kitchens, a sweet finale that brought comfort and warmth to the family table. Betty Crocker's 1946 recipe captured the care, patience, and subtlety required to transform simple ingredients into a custard-like delight that generations cherished. It was a dessert that proved attention to detail could turn ordinary pantry staples into something extraordinary. The preparation began with short-grain rice, never long-grain, simmered slowly in whole milk. Grandmothers stirred constantly, ensuring the rice absorbed the liquid evenly while preventing scorching on the bottom of the pot. Vanilla beans were preferred when available, though most kitchens used extract. This careful infusion created a gentle fragrance that filled the home, signaling that a treat was near. Raisins added texture and bursts of sweetness. Golden raisins soaked in rum were considered luxurious, but plain raisins softened in hot water were common and just as satisfying. The final touch was a light dusting of nutmeg, which elevated the dish with subtle warmth and aroma. Every step required attention, yet the process was meditative, connecting the cook to the generations that came before. Cost was minimal, yet the reward was rich. With rice priced around 15 cents per pound, each serving offered comfort and indulgence without strain on the household budget. Families served it chilled or warm, often garnished with a sprinkle of cinnamon, enjoying a dessert that balanced sweetness, creaminess, and nostalgia in every bite. Recreating Betty Crocker's rice pudding today is more than following a recipe. It is an opportunity to step into kitchens of the past, to experience the rhythm, patience, and pride that defined mid-century American cooking. Each spoonful connects modern cooks to a time when food nourished not only the body but also the spirit. Beef stroganoff. Beef stroganoff brought a touch of elegance to American tables, transforming ordinary weeknight meals into an experience that felt special. Betty Crocker's 1958 recipe introduced this Russian-inspired dish to mid-century kitchens, allowing families to enjoy a luxurious meal without excessive expense. It was a dish that combined technique, flavor, and presentation, making it a symbol of sophistication in everyday cooking. The recipe called for tender cuts of beef, preferably tenderloin, though round steak worked for families on a budget. Slices were cut against the grain and seared quickly to lock in flavor and maintain tenderness. Grandmothers knew that speed and heat were essential, preventing the meat from toughening during cooking. This attention to detail ensured that each bite was rich, flavorful, and satisfying. The sauce was equally important. Sour cream combined with beef broth created a smooth, velvety base, enhanced with a touch of tomato paste for depth. Betty Crocker's instructions emphasized serving the sauce over white egg noodles rather than rice, allowing the dish to retain its Russian authenticity while appealing to American tastes. A pinch of paprika or a sprinkle of fresh parsley added both color and subtle flavor, completing the presentation. Beef stroganoff was a special occasion meal. At $1.29 per pound for decent beef, it was not prepared every day, but when it appeared, it elevated the dining experience. Families savored it slowly, appreciating the tenderness of the meat, the richness of the sauce, and the warmth of a shared meal. Recreating Betty Crocker's beef stroganoff today is more than preparing dinner. It is an invitation to experience the sophistication, care, and attention that defined mid-century American home cooking. Each plate evokes a sense of history, connecting modern cooks to the flavors, techniques, and pride that shaped family meals for generations. Betty Crocker's Chicken Pot Pie. Chicken pot pie was more than a comfort dish, it was a symbol of resourcefulness, warmth, and family togetherness in mid-century American kitchens. Betty Crocker's 1952 recipe transformed leftover chicken into a luxurious, savory pie, turning simple ingredients into a centerpiece that could delight an entire household. This dish balanced practicality with elegance, showcasing the care and attention our grandparents devoted to home cooking. The filling was a careful combination of chicken, vegetables, and rich gravy. Pearl onions, fresh herbs, and occasional touches of cherry elevated the flavors, creating depth and sophistication. Grandmothers took pride in combining ingredients to achieve a harmonious taste, ensuring each bite carried warmth and comfort. The gravy was thick and creamy, coating each ingredient evenly, a testament to the patience required in pre-processed kitchens. The crust was equally essential. A mixture of butter and shortening produced a layered, flaky top that baked to a golden perfection. Brushing the crust with cream rather than an egg wash created a soft, inviting sheen that promised tenderness without overwhelming the delicate filling. Rolling, layering, and assembling the pie demanded precision, yet the outcome rewarded every moment of care. Chicken pot pie was economical as well as satisfying. Leftover poultry became the foundation for a meal that nourished and impressed, turning modest ingredients into a dish worthy of Sunday dinners. Families would gather around the table, enjoying the aroma, the textures, and the shared sense of accomplishment that this homemade pie delivered. Recreating Betty Crocker's chicken pot pie today is more than following a recipe. It is an opportunity to step into kitchens of the past, to experience the rhythm, patience, and pride that defined American home cooking. Each slice connects modern cooks to a tradition of ingenuity, care, and the enduring joy of family meals. Cheesy broccoli casserole. Before broccoli became known as a health food staple, Betty Crocker's 1957 cheesy broccoli casserole transformed it into a dish that families loved. This recipe was more than a side, it was a celebration of ingenuity, comfort, and flavor, demonstrating how simple vegetables could be elevated with care and attention. It became a symbol of mid-century American home cooking, where every meal carried thoughtfulness and pride. The preparation began by blanching fresh broccoli, preserving its bright color and tender crisp texture. Grandmothers carefully drained the florets, ensuring no excess moisture diluted the richness of the sauce. The cheese sauce was central to the recipe, a blend of real butter, flour, and milk cooked into a smooth, velvety base, combined with sharp cheddar that melted into creamy perfection. Seasoning was subtle but deliberate, with a touch of salt and pepper enhancing the natural flavor of the broccoli without overpowering it. Once combined, the broccoli and cheese mixture was placed into a buttered casserole dish and topped with a golden breadcrumb layer. This topping baked to crisp perfection, creating contrast against the creamy interior. Families often served the dish immediately, marveling at the balance of textures and the aroma that filled the kitchen as it emerged from the oven. Cheesy broccoli casserole was practical as well as delicious. Broccoli was affordable, and the recipe allowed families to create a rich, satisfying side dish without excess cost. It became a staple at dinners, potlucks, and holiday gatherings, bringing warmth and indulgence to every table. Recreating Betty Crocker's cheesy broccoli casserole today is more than cooking. It is an opportunity to step into kitchens of the past, experiencing the flavors, techniques, and care that shaped American home cooking. Every bite connects modern cooks to a tradition of creativity, patience, and the comforting joy of family meals. Betty Crocker's Lemon Meringue Pie. Lemon meringue pie was a dessert that balanced precision, elegance, and flavor, making it a signature of mid-century American kitchens. Betty Crocker's 1954 recipe guided home cooks through every step, turning simple pantry staples into a dessert that felt both luxurious and comforting. It was more than a pie, it was a symbol of care, skill, and the joy of sharing sweet moments with family. The crust formed the foundation. Made with a mixture of flour, butter, and a hint of sugar, it was rolled carefully and baked until golden, providing a crisp shell that supported the delicate filling. Grandmothers understood the importance of a well-baked crust. It had to be firm enough to hold the lemon filling without becoming soggy, yet tender enough to complement the soft meringue topping. The filling combined fresh lemon juice with sugar, eggs, and cornstarch, cooked slowly to create a silky, tangy custard. Every step required attention to temperature and timing, as the filling needed to thicken properly without curdling. The flavor was bright, refreshing, and balanced, providing a gentle contrast to the sweet meringue. The meringue itself was a work of art. Egg whites were beaten to soft peaks, gradually sweetened with sugar, and spread over the hot lemon filling. Baking created a golden, airy topping that crowned the pie with elegance. Families admired the contrast of textures: crisp crust, smooth lemon custard, and fluffy, lightly brown meringue. Lemon meringue pie was a centerpiece for special occasions, yet its ingredients were modest and accessible. It brought brightness to dinner tables, offering both visual appeal and satisfying flavor. Recreating Betty Crocker's lemon meringue pie today is more than following a recipe. It is a connection to past generations, a glimpse into the care, precision, and pride that shaped American home cooking, and a reminder that desserts can create enduring memories with every slice. Sloppy Joes. Sloppy Joes were a symbol of practicality, comfort, and ingenuity in mid-century American kitchens. This simple sandwich transformed ground beef into a flavorful, hearty meal that could feed an entire family affordably. Betty Crocker's approach ensured that the dish was not only economical but also satisfying, turning everyday ingredients into something memorable and comforting. The preparation began with ground beef, browned slowly to develop rich flavor while keeping the texture tender. Onions were added for sweetness, and a carefully balanced sauce combined tomato paste, a touch of vinegar, brown sugar, and a few select seasonings. The sauce was thick but moist, coating the meat evenly without becoming runny. Grandmothers understood that simmering the mixture allowed the flavors to meld, creating depth and warmth in every bite. Serving sloppy joes required fresh buns, lightly toasted or steamed, to hold the hearty filling. The contrast of soft bread and savory meat created an approachable, satisfying meal. Families often served the sandwiches with simple sides such as pickles, potato chips, or coleslaw, creating a complete and balanced dinner that was both fast and nourishing. Economically, sloppy joes were ideal. Ground beef was affordable, and the recipe stretched ingredients to feed several people without sacrificing taste. At mid-century prices, this dish provided families with both sustenance and enjoyment, offering a sense of satisfaction that extended beyond the plate. Recreating Betty Crocker's sloppy joes today is more than preparing a sandwich. It is an opportunity to step into kitchens of the past, experiencing the flavors, techniques, and thoughtful preparation that defined American home cooking. Every bite evokes a sense of history, connecting modern cooks to the resourcefulness, care, and comfort that made this simple sandwich a lasting favorite for generations.